Let's roll. We got a great guest on today, tight end coach from URI, University of Rhode Island, Coach Adam Griggs. How's everything going, Coach?
It's a great day. Great day. Hope everybody had a good New Year.
Coach, it'd be great. Usually we start off with have Coach kind of give his whole coaching background and everything, so just everybody gets up to date as to kind of your journey, and then we'll roll from there.
Oh, good God! I'll try to keep it. I'll try to keep it brief. It's crazy, but you just had a birthday. I'm 41, and all of a sudden I looked around the room the other day and realized I'm the oldest assistant coach we got on staff right now, coaching a position. So mine's a little crazy. I was lucky. I was a public school kid in New Hampshire. Got an opportunity at Bentley University where I went and played there, had a good career there. I still tell every kid it's funny. It's just about getting there. They basically took me because they had an entire class that didn't have one academic scholarship. So they had to take me, and I ended up playing for them. Otherwise, who knows where I would have been. Did well in school, joked that I'm the biggest nerd in college football, and then came out, fell in love with it, and started coaching at Assumption College. Got my first opportunity there, just sending out resumes, just blind emails all over the place when I was done playing. So I was at Assumption for a year. Head coach left. Bentley decided to give me a call to go be the O-line guy there. Assumption called me back, wanted me to be the OC there 4 years later. Then he left. Coach Ches came in. Coach Ches tried keeping me there as an O-line, but as we all know at D2, not all the positions take care of you as well. So I was back over to Bentley before I took some time. Got the honor, I say it all the time, to coach at MIT with some of the most impressive young men, I think, in the country that battled before going up to University of Rochester, where I spent 6 years. Probably the proudest work that I've done was kind of helping turn that program around and have coached some incredible players up there. And then got a call in May out of nowhere for this job here at URI, where I joke, I know that they were going after all the, the D1 guys and the young guys, whatever. And for some reason they chose me, and I hope I can live up to what they expected. But now I'm here at URI, and amazing staff, amazing area, amazing program, amazing support. Could not be happier sitting back home in New England at this program. And, I guess this D1 thing is kind of easy, where you just show up, win the conference, and go to the playoffs. So I guess that's how it works, right, guys?
Yeah.
So, but that's my year. I've coached everything. When guys ask me, I was an O-line guy. I've coordinated at a couple places, but I've coached wideouts, quarterbacks, everything but running backs on offense. I've been a special teams coordinator, and I will always say that, that's the most thankless job you can possibly be, is the special teams guy, living on the edge of your seat all week. But I've been very lucky to have worked for a lot of great guys who gave me a lot of responsibility in my 20 years coaching.
It's interesting because you spent a lot of time in that. I guess all your time in the Northeast area.
Yep.
And and different levels, and now you're at URI. What I think is interesting is that college landscape, as far as not just recruiting, has changed, but where players are going is changing. You just look at the college football playoff, and the Big Ten has more teams in the Final Four, obviously 3 to 4 teams, and the SEC, which used to kind of hoard all the players, and you know what I mean, and I jokingly, tongue in cheek, say that, well, now that everybody can pay players, it kind of evens out a little bit, but it's
yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, if everybody has some money to put around there, it's all legal now, so whatever works. But it's interesting. So players are really looking for their the best opportunity for them to be able to get in the field. Now the schools you've been at are, I would say, almost the majority, obviously, until you're at URI. Crazy high academic schools. Not that URI isn't a good school, it is, but it's Bentley, Rochester,
MIT,
MIT. I mean, the best, top 5 school in the country, right? So, what is kind of the transition, I guess, for you, like coming from some of those really, really high academic schools and moving up in levels as far as coming to URI?
I would say it's a lot more focused when you get here. One of the things, I know this is going to sound very, very opposite to what a lot of people will say, and a lot of coaches out there will absolutely say that recruiting is about the relationship. I agree with that. And I think how you represent your university, whether you're a young coach, whether you're the head coach, how you represent your program in university is important. How you speak to these young men, how you build relationships with coaches is a big deal. The one thing I would tell you, though, is when I was at those high academic schools, I made it clear to the kid, hey, you better not be choosing where you're going for the next 4 years and what you're going to do with the rest of your life based on me. If I'm showing up, it's because I have an opportunity to give you an education that I used to say was generationally changing. The entire lineage of your family could change because, I can't tell you the number of kids I walked into apartments, mom and dad, blue collar workers, proud of the work they did. My parents were not silver spoon either. But knowing that if that kid elected and did the work so that he could come to a university like Rochester, MIT, Bentley, that those kids were going to leave with close to six-figure jobs at 22, that they were going to be able to give their kids and their family things that maybe their parents didn't get. Now, their parents may have worked up from even lower than that to give them a better life, but that's what I tried to represent when I was at those schools. And a lot of it came down to, what did the kid want? At those levels, there's, NIL is not going to affect a lot of those schools anytime soon. It's not like we could help a kid other than, hey, we're going to give you admission support. We're going to see if you can get academic money, but, we didn't get a say in that. And even D2, even at Bentley, it's not like the scholarships we were giving out was a free ride to a lot of those guys. Yeah, I know like the Northeast 10 and some D2s have upped their game, where the financial packages can be different. But for the most part, what it came down to in recruiting those kids is you had to recruit kind of by the numbers, and it had to work through the funnel. Did the kid want this education? Did he want this location of where you were going? Was that what he wanted? I used to say it all the time, and I was a teacher. I got to work in alternative ed. I got to work with some crazy kids that I loved. But if you're going to be a teacher, is an $80,000 education worth it? Versus, you want to be an engineer. I had guys at MIT who were signing up to work with NASA and Google and Amazon, same at Rochester, Bentley, KPMG, and all that kind of stuff. If you wanted those opportunities, we could give it to you. But you had to work down from a broader demographic and then work yourself down to find your 20, 30 kids every year. At URI, I think we really have the ability to really focus in and really get to know the players that are joining this program. And if there's one thing I can say about what Coach Flem and those guys have done with this program, and go back and look at our season, I mean, we're going to end up being ranked somewhere in the top 15, I think, when it's all said and done. They come out with the final polls. But out of our 11-3 season, 8 of those games in the fourth quarter we're losing. And this team rallied together. And that, I think, is a testament to the recruiting of getting the right character guys who played together and doing a great job with the program. They stayed like that. I'm not saying you can't really get to know kids at the D2 and D3 level. It's just tough because you're recruiting such a high volume of player to get to that point.
Obviously, having athletic scholarships at URI makes a difference.
Yeah.
I'm curious, in the CAA, is NIL at all a factor at all in CAA?
This is one of those things where you hear the rumor mills of who's offering, who's not offering. And so much of that is coming, I think, from players, from outside factors. There are discussions circling around us nonstop. I mean, I can't wait at the convention coming up in Charlotte. I was just given a committee spot. Vince called me on that. So I'll be on the FCS Assistant Coaches Committee. Awesome. So I'm interested to hear what other guys are going through with it. Me being so new here, it's a conversation that keeps coming up, but I haven't seen the traction yet that you hear about at the FBS level.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, I think right now, I think it's really kind of just a rumor, kind of, hearsay, even maybe some guys trying to use it as leverage in terms of like maybe trying to work towards something, right, that we see a lot of. But I definitely think getting to the convention. I think it's kind of happening at the right time right now, next week, that you guys can kind of all get together, do what coaches do best, shoot the shit, kind of figure out what's going on, and then see kind of really how much truth is it above the CAA right now, where maybe some of those other guys that are kind of higher, and now it's going to trickle down. So you can really, hopefully get a better grasp on it coming out of this whole turnaround. But it's definitely something that I'm starting to, you're hearing the rumors of it happening. So I you could see it definitely coming to fruition.
And Derek, what I would say, and this is my super nerdy background now coming into this, but when you talk about just the economics of it, it's an emerging market. So
absolutely.
You're seeing players at the FBS level who are getting paid exorbitant amounts of money, and deservedly so. Like, I don't want to come off saying that it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think what it's going to do is it continues down this pathway of college football for the player being a business decision and seeing what the market really is. Hey, I'm a top FCS guy. Well, what's the market on a top FCS left tackle? Is it $10,000? Is it $80,000? There's going to be a lot of guys who overshoot, just like the NFL. Course. You hear about how the hell did Kirk Cousins get his contract? Yeah. Well, the market stated that he could, so he did. Who are going to be the programs that start really paying and kind of set the market, like you hear about with top NFL quarterbacks every year, top FBS players every year. And then it's going to start to balance out where now we're going to see probably a consistent market moving forward. I wouldn't be shocked in 5 years if the answer wasn't, hey, you're a top quarterback coming out of high school, not a transfer guy. And the market usually dictates that you might get maybe as low as 5 to 20,000. And that could be the FCS market. We're going to find that out as it goes. Right. I mean, the one thing you can say about FCS and FBS versus NFL, if I'm going to, support us a little bit more as a college coach and not an NFL guy, is there ain't going to be collusion between 200, 300 plus schools. So the market's going to be pretty natural and pretty organic to figure out, like, what do these guys end up being worth at the end of the day?
That's a great point. I'll tell you, because you coached at this level. So and Derek's heard me say some of this stuff before. I always wonder, like, okay, MIT's probably got themselves their share of, if not billionaires, probably does have some billionaires, but if not billionaires, at least plenty of 100 millionaires. If they just said, you know what, like, I'm just talking about in their own conference, right? I want to win this conference. And one of these guys that are super wealthy says, you know what, we're going to pay a quarterback, okay, or a couple of running backs or a receiver or whatever, to make sure that, I know that we're not playing at the highest level, but to make sure that we're winning the championship every year. Like, I think that's going to happen. Like, I think that, like, like, I'm just waiting for the high academic schools to say, oh, you guys think you have money? Ha! Now we'll see who really has money. You know what
I mean? Shoot, think about Johns Hopkins, MIT, U Chicago, Harvard, Yale. I mean, if Harvard alum wanted to show up, and again, I'm saying all this, and I am not going to pretend to be the expert on NIL. So if any of this stuff is illegal, NCAA, I'm sorry. Legal. Like, but like, to a point, those schools that put out 6-figure salaries for their graduates, what happens when those guys hit 35 and go, I want my alum to win? Like, and those guys come together, and you want to talk about a collection, like a collective that some of those alums can put together. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, does that trickle down? And now I was going to say the haves have more, but some of those schools that have those guys coming out making that kind of money are going to turn around and say, do we want to support our program that way? And it's going to be really interesting when that stuff starts happening, because you could see a giant shift. I don't think it's going to affect the SEC, because you're always going to have, like, boosters and the alumni passion behind SEC schools. But some of those other schools, like you talk about, like at the FBS level, what happens if those graduates from Rice, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, like very affluent,
look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's digging into the pockets and has given them an opportunity. What's the comedian? One of my favorite comedians.
Shane Gillis.
Yes.
Oh God, yes.
When he was busted,
crushing Saban the other day. Yeah.
Yep.
I was saying how Notre Dame. He's like, I think Notre Dame has a chance. We can pay players as well as Alabama now.
Yes.
So I think that's an interesting thing, and I think that also has helped the Big Ten programs, meaning Ohio State. They have the biggest NIL pool, right? $20 million. Michigan, now has Larry Ellison with his fourth wife as being a Michigan alum, putting in $10 million to get Bryce Underwood.
Quarterback.
Yep.
Yeah.
And giving 100 and dedicating the research to say I'm going to give 125K to every player at Michigan, right? So I think you're going to have a lot of that. So it's no longer, listen, Texas, obviously, you got lots of oil money, right? So, they've probably been doing it since the 60s and 50s anyway. But now they can really just dig it. So
I'm sure McConaughey gets his sideline tickets for just hanging
I call him Coach McConaughey.
Exactly.
So I call him Coach McConaughey.
That's Professor, by the way. We all know he's
he is. He's taught some classes. He throws on that. He throws on that burnt orange jacket, right, and that leather jacket, and gets out there and But I also think it's interesting, right, because for a while, especially when it came to Notre Dame, it was, the academic standards are too high to get the right players in to beat the SEC schools. And now here you're starting to see now all of this stuff kind of come full circle and balance it all out. And it's like Coach was saying earlier too, the geographical recruiting aspect of it is no longer, right? You used to, Northeast teams stayed in the Northeast and the South stayed in the South. Now you're seeing teams with the conference realignments and things like that. And with the way the world is, social media, the internet, all this kind of stuff, like this stuff is now national. And there are, you look at rosters and it is no longer, at the high levels geographical. There are guys from all over the country on numerous teams. It's just something that's really kind of almost balanced out the entire college football world. And I think it only goes forward and continues now with, like you said, guys being able to pay people and pay players, rightfully so, at a different level, depending on what teams really want to kick into it. I mean, the whole experiment that I look at right now is North Carolina, and how fast are they going to be able to flip this switch based off of some of those things, right? Kind of like a Dion, like what model are they going to go with and all those things. Every one of these is like a little case study that's kind of all collectively coming together.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing we're going to talk about, and believe me when I say the educational research that's being conducted on the kids who grew up with Zoom during COVID, 10 years down the road. Here's the other thing is what adult, what coach right now cannot work Zoom? Not a lot. So here's the thing. You're telling me I can meet with a player and his family in their home, talk about my university, talk about our plans for him, negotiate if I'm at the higher level, be able to do all these things with him, where all it comes down to at the end of the day to sell him is, do I have a pretty campus and do we get you here on campus? I could tell you one of the greatest things we started doing during COVID, and I can't remember who we got it from. It might've been Tony Reno and Yale, but during the COVID year, it was like, well, what are we going to do with recruiting? And they said, whatever we would normally be doing, how can we do it virtually? So next thing you know, we did, all right, we're having a Zoom virtual junior day. Free. Anybody who wants to sign up, it'll be 2 hours on Zoom. All the coaches talk, break out into rooms with your recruiting coaches. Let's see. We were hoping for like 35 guys. We had 480 kids from 37 states for University of Rochester showing up to this Zoom.
I mean, because you think about the accessibility, right?
All
like,
hey,
I can't get to this junior day at Rochester or MIT. I can't get up there and do it, but I sure as hell can sit in my house and do it and watch and listen and do all those types of things. So yes, as you move through the process, getting on campus is pivotal, but those initial, Coach, you talk about a funnel, right? Like I can go from now 35 guys writing name tags on, whatever with Sharpies to now I have 400 kids sitting in front of me, parents as well over their shoulder. Like, here we go, and yes. I think that it changed a lot.
And I think the other thing, and I joke about this line, hashtag Google is free. if you are a kid, and I'm not talking about the kid who's making his college decision based on NIL money, based on what's going to get me a shot to the NFL, like that stuff, I'm sure it still affects it. But for the other 99% of kids looking, between social media, between Zoom, between all this, you're getting kids who are now finding that every school across the country is accessible to them, and therefore every coach has to adapt to it as well. And it's not investment by us. If at University of Rochester, if at MIT, hell, here at URI, I mean, I know we have this idea that, you know, every D1 school has unlimited money in their pocket, but that's not always the case. The ability to access those guys that way is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's an enormous deal. So you, at the time that you've been at URI, what have you guys been doing now from a recruiting standpoint that has really kind of changed from before, besides like Zoom and those kind of things? Like, what are some of the things that you guys to track? URI was always a decent program, but you're elevating to a whole different level now.
I'm biased because I love it. I thought URI. I always loved URI. I don't know what the niche was about it or whatever it was, but there was just something about Rhode Island. It was, I really can't explain it in words. For me, coming up as a player, you know, ultimately I went to Sacred Heart, but like URI was just always one of those schools that it was like, man, like it's such a cool area, and there's not much else when it comes to like that area specifically in terms of schools that are like it on that level. You know, there was just always an appeal for me as being a kid from Jersey to be like, hey, like this is a cool school, and I really would like why. I don't understand why it was, but it really was one of those schools that was always at the top of the list for I really don't know, you know. But for you, Coach, obviously going in there, like, you know, what is it about it?
So for me, it was the simple fact of, and I think any university you look at, who is it going to appeal to? And we have a campus that is its own campus. If you are not I want to go to school in the city guy, which a lot of kids, believe it or not, are not that. They don't want to be fighting their way through traffic to get to their classes. So you come on here, it's a beautiful campus. You go 10 minutes down the road, you're at the beach. You go 20 minutes west for those guys who want to go hiking, fishing, being outdoors. For those guys who do want accessibility to the city, Kingston Station's right over there. We're 20 minutes away from downtown Providence. You can take a train into Boston tomorrow. You can head down the coast into New York City or the cities there. It provides that way where, just looking at the guys I've recruited, I'm able to walk into, let's say my areas. I can walk into inner city Syracuse and the kid's going to be comfortable here. He has his cities. He has everything he wants when he comes there. He has a football program and facilities here. They're excellent. He gets a great education. Perfect. I can also go into some of those upstate New York schools, and I have a kid who came out here. He shows up with his hoodie, everything on. Hey, where were you before the game visit? Oh, I was checking out the hunting areas, half an hour, 45 minutes west of this, because he's an outdoorsman. And both of those guys are going to kind of find something that works for them in this area. And I think that's something that just makes it really easy when you're talking about recruiting, because whoever you are outside the field, outside your academic experience, you're going to get that social life as well. And I think sometimes whether it's coaches, whether it's guidance counselors, or even the kid doesn't realize, dude, you're still talking about 4 years of living somewhere. Are you happy with the life that you have there? Yes, a lot of it's going to be football. Yes, the other lot is going to be academics. But in the rest of that time, what are you getting for a social life? What are you getting for that engagement? 18 to 22 years old, trying to figure out what you're into. And when you talk about URI, you know, being right next to Newport, if you're one of those guys, I want to go check out, you know, the music scene down there. You got some beautiful cities around here. You got great areas to live in. You know, the fact that some of our players live off campus, and their off-campus housing is basically on the beach. Why? Because everything in Rhode Island is basically on the beach.
Right.
If that's something that hits you, you're
it's
going to
the coolest thing.
Newport, baby. Newport
is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically a college town. You know, you look at some of these guys play, you know, like, oh, you know, Penn State is a college town, or West Virginia, college town. But on somewhat of a scale, if you scale it down a little bit, like Newport is still a college town, right? And like you said, with New England, so many things being so accessible in the area, it's kind of the same thing. Like even when I went to Sacred Heart, it was a small school, but there were so many schools around it that you felt like you were at a bigger school, and it was pretty much like a college town, right? So the appeal, for players, like you said, Coach, and I think it's really the smallest part that people look at in the recruiting world in terms of, look, you look academics, you look football, obviously, because that's what you're going to be doing. But that other social aspect of your living in these places where now like URI offers, like you said, that city vibe, that rural vibe, whatever these kids want or whatever they love off the field, as much as they do football, it's easily attainable at URI.
Yes. And I say that where everywhere I've been has kind of been like that. Like if you're at MIT, you're in Boston. I mean, we want to talk about that as a pro team city, pro sports city, all that kind of stuff. But how many colleges are in a 20-mile radius of Boston? When I was at University of Rochester, that's a major city. It's 250,000 people, but you go 15 minutes north and you're walking down the beaches of the Great Lakes, and there are 3 other universities there. There's like 10 within 30 miles. So you get this kind of eclectic student population that's all socializing together off of campus. And in New England, you have to be that. I mean, how many universities in New England are 50,000 kids? I don't know if there are any. I don't know what BC's population is, but I think that is probably the biggest. And even then, if you're a BC student in Boston, you're hanging out with kids from BU, Emerson, Suffolk, Bentley, all the way through that. So that's one of the things you're going to get, especially in New England, especially in the Northeast, is there are just so many universities that it adds to your kind of student experience from a social standpoint.
100%.
That makes a ton of sense. So Coach Fleming, he's been there for a while, right? Was his son also a coach there for a while?
He was here. Obviously, that was all before me.
Yeah, that was right.
I don't know Coach Flem's son.
But from recruiting, I remember his son.
Coach Flem built Sacred Heart to kind of what it was before Coach Like, I mean, like Coach Flem was like, they were the staple of Division I AA non-scholarship schools, right? Like there, and then he obviously made his moves to go to where he did and progress. So when he came back to URI, it was an immediate like, oh, okay, like here's a guy that knows the Northeast. This is a program like that is, it's always like Dave said, it's always like been there. It's just like how they're going to take that next step, right? And I mean, we just had on, Coach Fabish, who's now at Petty, but the staff that he talked about when he was at URI and where they are now, like you want to talk about names and positions, like just a school that's always kind of like, and now you're talking about your ranking going up and all these other kind of things. Like there's an appeal there for a lot of kids, especially now, to go and be a really good program. And Coach Flem knows how to do that. He's been at the high levels, right? And now here he is. He's got a couple years in now, starting to make some noise, in the rankings, which I think obviously these guys, all recruits, look at rankings and like that matters to them.
I think what I found very quickly, and I'll give a short little story about Coach Flem. I'm sure if he sees this, he's going to think I'm sucking up to him. But one of the first things,
Coach, we all got to kiss ass a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, hell yes, man. One of the first things I'll tell you for any coach who happens to watch this is look at his staff. Are there guys who have stayed with him the whole time? It means that's a guy you can work for. All right. And I get it. There have also been guys who have left here to go on to great jobs. All right. And he is very supportive of that. But for example, I had my first day was May 20th. All right. On May 17th, I'm cleaning out at Rochester. It's a big day, big move for me. And my father passes away. All right. Unexpectedly, couldn't believe it. I'm lucky. And I've shared this with a lot of people, is like in his passing, I realized how rare it is to have 40 years of a relationship with your father being positive. No falling outs, no issues. My parents are still together, like realizing how lucky I really was. But I show up on Monday. This is my first time face-to-face meeting Coach Flem. And he lets me meet some of the staff, a bunch of guys I had either coached against or worked with, having a great day, really easy walking through the door. And when he sat down with me, he kind of reminded me, he goes, I know you're starting here. I know you want to hit the ground running, but realize you got one mother, you got one father. Don't screw it up. Mom needs you, you leave. And I won't ask you a question about it. And from that moment going forward, I was like, I'm working for the right dude. And trust me when I say this, whether you are a recruit or a young coach trying to hitch up to somebody, I've worked with a lot of head coaches. Don't sit there thinking that the D1 coaches are the guys who are out for themselves. There are a lot of guys at the lower levels who are willing to do whatever it takes to move themselves and their families up. But I realized in that very first day that this is a guy at the end of the day who's going to look out for me as well as a human being, not just as the guy coaching his tight ends. He's fair, he's firm, knowledgeable. He lets his coaches coach. But the biggest thing is you watch the way he interacts with the players, whether you are the number one top guy, for us, AJ Pena type, who ended up, he was the one guy who really transferred because he got a great opportunity, FBS schools all over him, Nebraska, Memphis, all of them. All right. Whether you were AJ or whether you were a guy who was third string, whatever, your relationship with Coach Fleming was not dictated on whether or not you could give him something. All right. He's a guy who really tried to branch out, and he would tell you if he was sitting here, I haven't done a good enough job. He's done a better job than most head coaches I've ever been around at trying to establish relationships with his players on a person-to-person basis, not simply what can you do for me on a football field. And I think that's a big reason why these guys, they'll fight and die for this dude, man. There's a lot of loyalty in this place for him. And I think it trickles down through the coaches, through these guys. He makes it very clear for all of us is you're going to be fair, you're going to be firm, and you got to build the relationship with your guys. The way the players see the assistants, I think matters a lot to him when he's making his decisions as to who he wants to surround this program and who he wants to surround his kids with. Is guys who are going to look out for their best interests as well. So I think when you do it that way, it's just a testament of if you do things the right way, get rid of your analytics, get rid of your, the business decision. It's still going to come down to, do I want to go work for you? I mean, you guys are in the professional worlds as well, and you know this. Yeah, Google's great, but if my manager doesn't give a crap about me, I ain't going to be at Google long. I don't care how great the place is. And if they pay me well, great. I'm still going to be looking for other opportunities. But when you work for the company and the people and the program who care about you, that's one where it's like, dude, the late nights don't feel late. The early mornings don't feel early because I'm willing to go to work with these guys. And very lucky that I'm here. And I've been very lucky with a lot of great staffs, great mentors, great head coaches. Can't say enough. Coach Martinovich at University of Rochester and MIT, when he brought me with him to Rochester. But that was during the time I went through cancer treatment for a little over a year while I was coaching. And that dude was on my ass about taking care of myself and told me flat out, if he starts seeing me slack because, oh, well, coach, I got to do this for recruiting. I got to do this. There were times he'd look at me and go, I will cut you loose and you'll be on medical leave if you're not going to take care of yourself. And as much as it's frustrating when I was there in the moment, it's like, how are you going to be mad with a head coach who's like, dude, I care about making sure you're okay in this process. So the people you work for matters just as much as everything else, guys.
No, that's a great point. I know a lot of college coaches who have worked for guys that are not like that. So, and they've really if you talk to almost any guy that's kind of left college coaching, that's one of the things. They work for some guy who just didn't give a shit about them. It just made the work environment very, very difficult, right? And I think that's an important part because the time you guys are spending now is extreme. Yeah. So, you got to try to make the work environment as good as possible because of the fact that it is such a – I guess you guys are eventually going to have to start doing what maybe they already do, what like Google and all those places do, have a spread of food for you guys all day, just keep you going.
God, yes. And he does things like that to take care of us when he knows we're working late. Hey, boys, I'm going to take care of dinner tonight. We got to get ready for William and Mary. We got to get ready for UNH, whatever. And all of a sudden, little things like that go a long way.
Oh, so far. Far.
Yeah. We'd all love to say, who's working who wouldn't love more money? All right. But if every day I know I'm working with somebody who cares about me, who's going to look out for me, does those little things, just checking in, saying hi, whatever, that stuff goes a long way. And I think because of that, coming here, it almost reemphasized, like, I better be like that with my players if I'm even questioning my behavior or whether or not I'm truly getting invested in those kids. I'm watching a head coach investing in me as a 40-year-old man. I better be able to give that right back to my players. And to a point, I'm sure we've said this before, is, if you're not doing this because you love being around the kids, like, you ain't going to last. Like, it's not going to work. You better love the guys you have in your room. And coaching tight ends, man, they are the life of the party. Just giant animals running around. They make meetings a lot of fun at 6:45 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're definitely an interesting breed, that's for sure. Right? They're a little bit of everything, right? They're a little bit athlete. They're a little bit, maybe prima donna is the wrong word, but they're, a little offensive lineman, got a little that in them, right? They got a little bit of that. They are characters. But Coach,
absolutely.
Historically, you're usually the smallest position group on the field, both sides of the ball, bar none. How does your relationship with your players, because it is, maybe you have 4 or 5 guys, right? Which is usually the least amount, like, for a position group, at that level. How do you think your relationship differs than when you're, an O-line coach and you got, 15 guys in the room? How does that differ a little bit when it comes to tight ends?
Huge. As an O-line coach, when I usually aim to have somewhere in the range of 16 to 18 guys, you want to have your top 8 working with the ones. You want to try to give 2 full lines to the scout D or to the defense for a scout team. And you slowly build relationships with all those guys. There's a lot of dudes. They gotta kind of work there. But there's a lot more collective. There's a lot more us. You get into the tight end room, like, we have the things that we stand on as a positional group. There's no question about it. But you start to figure out the personalities a little bit. You know how to coach the personalities a little different, one kid to the other. You know who responds to the hard hand. You know who responds to pulling them off. But the biggest thing I tell everybody is you got to be honest with the guys. It's going to allow you, whether it's, hey, you're playing poorly, I got to pull you. I love you, but I got to pull you. That's my job. And they respect that. These are young men, and they understand how that works. But if they don't think that you know them and you never show any sort of, hey, this isn't tight end number 2, this is Jordan Riondu. Like, I know Jordan. I know what's going on in his life. I know all this stuff. That dude's not going to turn around and say, you don't care about me. He's going to look at it and say, I have to play better. And then we have to have the conversation of what the hell we need to do to get you to play better. Having the small room, especially coming from Rochester, where, as much as I love the staff, we had 7 dudes doing everything. And my 2 assistants on offense, I had the head coach working with quarterbacks, and I had 2 young coaches on offense. I had to be involved in everything. I had to be involved in the entire offense. I was looking over 48 different kids. To all of a sudden come here and see, hey, I got to take care of my room. I'm going to branch myself out from my room to the O-line, to the quarterbacks, to the wide receivers, cross over into special teams. You start to build those relationships with different guys as they come naturally, but you got to take care of your room first. Obviously, having smaller guys, you put the same attention, you get to know them even better than a bigger room like the O-line.
What are some of the things, like, what does a practice look like for your tight end group? What are you guys working through each day? People
That's a great question.
Understand what tight ends are doing for practice. So if you kind of go through that.
Oh, everything.
Yep.
Everything.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about the tight end position, as an OC, the tight end was a huge focal point for me. In who we got the ball, where a lot of reads started. He needed to be the guy who was reliable to catch the ball. If he was getting yak, it was going to be, I'm getting up the field, getting violent. I'm a statement maker, and that's great. But in our indies, let's say, per se, I need to find time to work on the fundamentals. I need to work on the physiological training of run blocking, of route running. I also need to spend time with the communication. I need to bring them over with Coach Flanagan and the offensive line, so we can work our combos with them, work the communication with them. Then we have to bring them over with the receivers and quarterbacks so that we're on the same page for the route concepts, how we're going to convert certain things, what are the different looks we're going to give, what's the motions and shifts have to look like, what's the timing of that got to look like. And then you talk about all the displaced blocks. I mean, tight end has really, in a lot of shotgun teams, become what that fullback used to be, all right, where there's a lot of point of attack blocking. All right. There's a lot of I'm displacing across the line and going. I'm inside zoning, front side, backside, two different skills. All right. I'm flatting down the line, taking out the backside the end. I'm flattening and arcing. I'm blocking in space. It's a lot of little skills that you want to recruit good athletes who have a little knack of toughness. The kid we had, Tommy Smith, who was an all-conference specialist. He wasn't a returner and made all-conference first-team specialist, and then was listed as a fullback because he worked with the wide receivers, came over and worked with us with the tight ends. It worked. Honestly, he was also our wildcat guy. He did everything, but finding enough time to get in enough of the little skills that he was going to need week to week, it becomes tough. So you get a 5-minute indie, you better not plan for one thing during 5 minutes. You're working on efficiency and setting everything up and making sure we're going from drill to drill to drill, being efficient. And that also means, and the biggest thing that I would tell you is meetings. Talking about the drills we're doing. What's our focus for every single one of those meetings? Do you understand the teaching progression that I want? Do you understand what we're trying to accomplish? Good. So when we get on the field, our indies need to be the hardest part of practice. It needs to be the hair on fire. We're going in, perfect technique here. If I'm focusing on the hips in this drill, those kids need to know they're focusing on the hip. All right, now for the second half of this indie, we're working on hand placement on outside zone. They need to know that that backside hand needs to be in the sternum. The right side hand needs to be loose and cap it off. I can't re-explain the drill every single time, or I'm cutting out 20% of the time I get all these skills done. And the other thing is I have to do a good job of seeing with my coordinator, whether it was Coach Murphy, who's gone on to another opportunity, now Coach Flanagan, what do you want these guys doing this week? Now I need to make sure that I have time for those guys to replicate that in Indy before we go to the full speed stuff. And then usually that Thursday when we're working all situations and we get 10 minutes of Indy, what's the big thing I got to work on with those guys that maybe we didn't do all week in practice very well? All right. I need to make sure I hammer that out. Or we're getting them out during pre-practice. Hey, guys, I need to steal 2 minutes with you. We got to get this right. It's a really good kind of joke and call it a board meeting, but it's all the tight ends and me sitting there. Let's talk about the skills, who's struggling with what, who really needs to get a couple more looks at this. I got one guy who I know would always say, Coach, I need more of the displaced blocks. Like, I'm not good at it. I need some more live reps at it. All right, let's take care of you there. Let's take care of this kid running certain routes. Let's do this. So even though it's a small group, because there's such a vast amount of skills you're asking them to do, you really got to be kind of meticulous on where those guys are getting those reps and who needs them later in the week.
I wanted to substitution must be a big deal with the tight ends because you're using different guys in different situations, and each guy has a slightly different skill set, or you have a go-to guy, and then you have a couple other guys that fit certain roles, 2 tight end sets and stuff like that. And how do you go and like prepare? Because it's such a diverse position. It's become a very diverse position, meaning like you have guys that are inline guys. You talked about it a little bit. One guy's better at blocking, the other guys. How do you kind of address all their needs and all their different kind of skill sets, or do you recruit the same kind of guy? I mean, I don't know how you guys do it.
Nah, you want a room, in my opinion, you want a room that has, let's say you have 6. All right. Let's say you have 6 guys. You want a room of guys who have the ability to do just enough of everything if they're in that situation. We all know I say the word tempo. Everybody understands that. Hey, I'm not going to always be able to sub out and sub in the perfect kid for that deal, but I need to know that you have a chance of accomplishing it. Now, the other thing I would tell you for anybody who's working multiple tight ends, different running backs, things like that, your offensive coordinator is your best friend. Yeah. Whether it's for example, hey, we have this package and we have this package. Everyone is the same except for the tight end. Everyone is the same except for the running back. Everyone is the same except our X and Z flip. Like, the more you can do that, It's just a hierarchy kind of thought process where before I call the formation, the motion, and the play, do I have the personnel in there? Have we repped that personnel doing those jobs? Good. So when we call that personnel, the kid's already, boom, all right, we're in Kong package, all right, as opposed to this package. All right, let's roll. We know where we're supposed to be. The other thing you can really do to help out your tight ends and multi-tight end sets is go through the hierarchy of the plays. Now, that's dangerous. All right. If you say, hey, when we go 2 tight ends, I want you on the ball, you off the ball, unless then you guys can switch. You better not have tendencies. You better have gone through the process and said, yes, if we do this, we have a play action off it, we have an outside run off it, and we have an inside run off it. All right. If we flip you guys, do we have all those things together as well? If you allow that conversation to happen, the kids can do it. And they can do it well, but the play calling needs to mirror so that you eliminate the tendencies of where guys go. And I think that's just one of those things that I found at this level that guys really pay attention to. It's not just, hey, this is 12 personnel 3-by-1. This is, oh, no. This is 12 personnel with this kid off the ball, this kid on the ball. Here are the plays that they run. Well, you better not be able to tell the defense, hey, we're running the ball to the left. You just don't know where on the left. You're giving them an edge. So your coordinator, I think, becomes your best friend in that situation of create the different packages. These kids can handle it. They can process it. They know, hey, the difference between this and this and this for the wide receivers doesn't change. So they don't have to worry about it. The difference in this and this change for the tight ends. They do need to worry about it. Well, you're meeting and you're talking about it. So I can't push that enough is you don't need necessarily have 9 million formations. If you package it correctly, guys are starting off the play already knowing the roles and the plays that come out of those personnel groupings for that week.
That makes a ton of sense. Is the preparation from a meeting standpoint, do you have to use meetings with your group and then meetings with like the O-line? Like, do you guys have them bounce around to different group meetings, or are they kind of in your group and you kind of address all of it with them separately?
In most of our meetings in season, it'll just be with us.
Okay.
And what that comes down to is the relationship as a tight ends coach, my relationship with our wide receivers coach, my relationship with the O-line coach, in protections, my relationship with the running backs coach, and then obviously quarterbacks, offensive coordinator, like you have to have that so that even though I may not be telling the tackle and tight end in the same room what they're doing, but I know that Mike Flanagan is telling his O-line and the tackles the exact same thing I'm telling the tight ends there. And now when they come together, they're incorporating what we're coaching. All right. And that comes from us being on the same page, which I think this offensive staff does an amazing job with. Early in camp, though, I think it's a great idea if you're a tight ends coach to take time, whether it's just install, whether it's just inside run, whether it's just 7-on-7 with the wide receivers, but have some time, because I think the other thing that's important is as a tight ends coach, I think your tight ends are your first priority. I think the second priority is really ensuring that you have a role in special teams. All right, which Coach Gilmer and I get to work a lot with. I love special teams and am looking forward in upcoming years. I hope that Troy wants to use me even more, but I love the role there. But the other thing is really you got to be that next guy who's able to step in and coach an offensive lineman if Mike's coaching something else or misses it. I need to be able to talk to the wide receivers. And those guys also need to be able to have a relationship to talk to the tight ends when they mess up or they need to be coaching something. It can't be, especially on offense, it can't be the tight ends coach coaches him, the wide receivers coach coaches them. It needs to be very fluid. I will say this from a quarterback standpoint. Don't coach the quarterbacks. Let the quarterback coach or the OC coach the quarterbacks.
That's the one you stay away from, coach.
Everybody, I don't care who you are. Now and then in protection, the O-line coach may be able to lean in a little bit, but leave the damn quarterbacks alone for their guy. But the rest of us,
they're territorial too. Those guys get territorial. That's my quarter. Like, it's the one position. Yes. Like, I never, especially when the head coach is involved a lot more with that guy. It's like, dude, you're on your own. You got a question? Like, okay, maybe, but like, that's the guy. Don't talk to me, buddy.
Yep. But the rest of us, and I think the other thing that's really important, the players see the relationship that you have as a staff. and they see
right.
me and Coach Flan joking around. They come up here, me and Coach Loftus are in the same office 80% of the time. Like, these guys see that, well, if these guys are tight and they're talking to each other, then when Coach Griggs walks in to talk to a receiver, okay, he knows what he's talking about. And whether they know me from Adam, they know, hey, I'm going to be able to walk in and talk to you about stuff that me and Coach Loftus are on the same page on, and I can trust that. So now we're going to be efficient with it. So I think the way that your staff presents themselves to the players also matters in how they take coaching from their non-positional coach.
Coach, I think that's a huge pivotal point too. Like, especially nowadays, like, kids see right through the bullshit, right? They know if I ask a question to this coach and he doesn't know, well, then just own it, right? Like, hey, I don't know. I'm going to go find out and kind of help out, and I'll let you know, right? Or I'll get back to you. I can't stand guys that need to feel like they're always correct, or it's my way or the highway. The relationship, like you said, within a staff itself, the players see right through all of that bullshit. They know who's cool with who's maybe a little whatever. You know what I mean? Like, when you have that overarching, we're all on the same page, right? Like, this is everything moves smoothly. Players see that, and now there's a level of comfort for them, right, that allows them to play freer, or allows them to just, not be so tight when they're playing. And I think it's one of the most overlooked things about the game itself is how those coaches can work with each other. And it's ultimately like what the players are seeing when you're not expecting them to be watching you or listening to you. Maybe if you're just having that side conversation with your O-line guy and you're kind of, whatever, when they see that positivity and they see that everybody's on the same page, everybody's aligned from the top down, it just creates a different atmosphere within the team itself, allowing your players to get the most out of your players, I think, when that happens. And I think it's one of the most overlooked things.
And I'll take that one step further. I'm new. I'm the
right.
New guy.
You walked in the door on May 20th. These guys were already off campus, like gone. Maybe now they come back for summer workouts. Who's this new guy in the building? Like, where'd he come from? And right away, they're Googling your shit. They're knowing everywhere you've been, everything about it. I mean, look, and rightfully so. Those guys should do the research on us, just like we do recruiting them. Right. I want that to be a part of it. I want them to invest that within me as a coach itself. So especially being a new guy, 100%.
And I think that's one of those things where, like, I was able to walk through the door, and with these guys, it's like, listen, guys, let's be honest. I've run my own offense in multiple places. There are going to be things that are different here that I'm going to be learning as we go. All right. Empowering your older players. Like, I had the kid Brady Rourke, who was my starter for me this year. The kid's been in this offense for 6 years. There ain't a lot of things that he doesn't know. So there were absolutely times where it's like, hey, if I get this coverage, how do I convert this route? And I'm like, I want to tell you this, but hold on. Brady, come here. Brady, hey, he got this roll coverage. Like, what's our rule on that? Like, what has been told to you in the past? And Brady turns around and goes, oh, yeah, like, hey, if I get this, coach, like, I'm probably going to turn into this. I'm like, you feel confident in that? All right, let's roll with that. And
the kids respect that.
Yes. And not to mention, you're just empowering the knowledge base of some of your players and creating a little bit of leadership aura around them. Even if they're not the physically dominant kid, you're just allowing guys to have a lot more say and a lot more feel on it. Now, you got to do that with the right guys. You got to do it with the guys who know it. And you can't be doing that. And being very honest, you can't do that on the base shit, man. All right. You got to be doing that with, hey, this is a weird situation. Brady, you've been in this offense. Have you run into this before? And if he looks and he goes, oh, I don't know about that. All right, no problem, man. Hey, we're going to see it on film. I'll get the answer from the OC. I'll get back to you in meetings. So
coach off the tape, right? Coach off the tape. Do your research. Go back and do it. Look for the right answer. Allow them to understand that you're empowering them a little bit, but you're still the guy at the end of the day. But I just think that's a big shift within coaching now, I think. And the empowerment of your players themselves. And it's a little different, obviously, at the high school level because you're dealing with maturity aspects. And you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have a junior that's more of a senior than he is, or sometimes you have a junior that's more of a freshman, right? Like the puberty stuff and all that maturity level comes into it, but I just think a lot of times when you empower peer and the players themselves to kind of take an ownership of it, they put a little bit of that on their shoulder and they take a little bit more pride in it. And then maybe you're going to get them to work a little bit harder. And then, you saying something to a player is one thing, but when another player says something to a player, that just to me was always the recipe for positivity and better things to happen coming from the guy that's literally going through it with you, on the line, like putting on the pads. That stuff is a different level of whatever you want to call it.
And I couldn't, and here it was very clear.
Maybe buy-in is the word, right? Like maybe buy-in, I guess, or, one of those types things to have, like, especially, like you said, in a tight end room where you have 6 guys, one's a 5th-year senior, one's a junior, every one of them is at a different level of playing. Hey, I've seen more time here, or maybe right now I'm special teamer, but I'm still, I'm traveling because I can do all these other things. So if I do get there, like when that room and the peer-to-peer stuff starts to really kind of ramp up, that's how I think, the culture within your program, the culture within your room has just really taken it to a whole different level. That's when you win, to be honest. Like that's when you win a lot more.
And that is University of Rochester in a nutshell. When I was there and we started off there, it was 53 guys on the roster in the Liberty League, which is excellent Division III football.
Big time.
And we had to get to the point, and we knew we had something when the players started being the ones to handle issues. They were the ones that were helping teach. They were the ones that were setting the tones and drills. They were doing everything right. And now it was like, okay, now we've gotten to the relationship. And we talk about college football being a business. We just talked about that in NIL. Well, guess what? I'm not your boss. We have to work together. The tight end room needs to be efficient. My job is to coach it and have knowledge. Your job is to do the job. But we have to work together in our meetings to make sure that we all can do the job that we're talking about. We need to learn it together. We need to be on the same page before we even hit the field. And I think the more that you start treating those guys as colleagues, necessarily your employees, is when you're going to start seeing a lot more success in your room. And at Rochester, by year 5, year 6, I knew I could roll the football out and tell those guys what I wanted. And at times, it was almost like if somebody did something wrong, I'd turn around. I didn't even have to coach it because that senior running back or that senior offensive lineman was already on them on something. And we've also taught those guys, this is how you approach it. You're not yelling at him for messing up. He needs to know it.
Yep.
Right. And then you turn around and you got to accept their opinions. Like one of the big things I did as an O-line coach, walk in with those starting 5, meet with them separate from everybody else. Who's the ringleader? Most of the time it's the center. Sometimes it was my right guard. And I'd look at him and go, all right, guys, this kid goes down. This is who I have going in. This guy goes down. This is the situation. This is the way that I'm going to do injuries. Do you guys trust those guys next to you? And there were times if I'm 50-50 on film as who I want, those guys would look at me right away and go, absolutely not. Like, that's the next kid we want in, coach. We trust him. Well, good. I'm going to roll with them because we're working together. We've gotten to that point and that trust in each other that whoever they're saying, no, we're going to feel better as a unit with this kid. All right, I'm going to roll with it. But now you got to stand up for it. That kid's got to play.
Right. And again, that's more you're giving those guys ownership of their O-line, right? Like now it's, hey, coach, I know you're over there with a headset, but like this is the guy I got to change the protection with, or this is the guy that I'm doubling to this guy with. And you know what? I don't trust him right now. Right. But look, I'll work with him, coach. Like I'll get him there. You know what I mean? But right now, not so much. Again, you're giving them the ownership to kind of take a little bit of that extra pride on their shoulder in terms of, right, like these are the guys we're rolling with. I think it's just pivotal when it comes to, especially as the higher levels you get where the attention to detail is so critical when it comes to it. You know, that small little mistake could be the difference in a freaking game, right? Like we blow a protection or something here, and now all of a sudden we get a sack, fumble for a touchdown, we got problems. And it's all because this guy wasn't ready and the coach thought he was. I think when you're talking about it a lot, coach, ego is the word that comes to my mind with a lot of coaches and things of that nature, right? Like there's a lot of egos within this profession. Excuse me. And I think the guys that can put that to the side a lot of times is when you'll get more success. Being on the same, I don't want to say the same level as your players, but you're making them feel like it's not so much of that old school militant, you do what I say because I say it type of thing, where I think that's kind of where coaching has evolved to now. And I think you have to, you show them the respect and then they'll show it back. I think that's very much the way that I think a lot of these kids have been raised nowadays. And I think it's just really kind of how coaching has evolved. And the guys that have embraced that and kind of ran with it have been a little bit more successful than I think some of the other guys.
Well, kids nowadays want to know why to everything. And before that was like a frustrating thing for people is like, you don't need to know why. Yeah, you do.
Yes, you do.
If I want that kid watching film, if I want him thinking about football, if I want him doing all that stuff, then guess what? I need to have him understand the why. The why is a question when you get by the insecurity of some players where they ask why simply because they messed up versus they ask why because they actually want to know. Well, isn't that what you want? You have a kid more invested in the way he's playing and learning the game of football. And guess what? On top of that, that's a kid that if you give that respect to, you're going to be able to pull that kid in with the ego and go, hey, listen, I give you a lot of room. You've done a lot of great things for me, but here's some of the negatives you're doing in practice. This is some of the negatives of how you're handling your teammates. These are some of the negatives of how you're handling yourself, and I need you to be able to hold this together. So if I'm going to give you that respect, I'm telling you right now as a colleague that you need to act a certain way. You need to hold yourself together. And if you can't, you need to come to me so that I can help you get through that. It's all that trust base. We just talked about it as a coach. Don't you want to work for people who care about you? Don't you want to work for somebody who's going to let you do your job and have that level of autonomy to be able to coach the tight ends, to coach the run game, to coach my blocking technique? Well, good. I also want players to have the autonomy to make some of those decisions and have some of the risk taking of, hey, I think I see this in the D. I'm going to make this call. And if they're right, celebrate it. If they're wrong, teach them why they're wrong. You've just gotten them to the next level of everything. And yes, is that more work? Of course it is. But if your answer is you just do as I say, no shot. But I grew up in New Hampshire. I got a lot of friends who do manual labor during the day and stuff like that. They don't think about their job when they go home. They grab the hammer, they go to work for 8 hours, they collect their pay, and they get the hell out of there.
Punch the clock, bro, right? I call them they're card punchers, right? They're time clock stampers. That's it, dude. This is not a profession where you do that, right? Like education itself, right? Like, hey, I teach from this time to this time. That's not where it stops. It's before, it's after. This is kind of what it is, the type of investment that you need to be at a high level, and that's what it takes. That's what you sign up for. So you want your players to be just as invested in it as you are.
You want them to take ownership of everything they're doing.
Yes,
that's one of the things. Is everything they're doing, and it's one of the things I always say. Like you tell kids, figure it out. Like here's what I'm explaining to you. Try and figure it out. Figure it out for yourself, because once you figure it out yourself, you'll know you know it, right? And so you're giving them parameters of what you need them to do. But I can't reach this guy. I'm doing the right technique. I can't reach it. Well, you got to figure out, obviously you got to move your feet quicker, all those kind of things, but you got to figure out what you have to do athletically to be able to make that happen. Right. And so maybe you need to line up a shade wider. Okay. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need to do things like that. And those are the kind of things that get them to get ownership, and then they have success with it. And once they have success with it, that they're in. They have that ownership, and now they're like, you know what? Like, coach taught me, giving me all the tools I need, right, in my tool belt. But I also need to be able to execute, right? I need to be able to be on the field and be able to do things, because coach can't go out there and make that block or run that route or catch that ball, like, and that's an important thing. And in the end game, like, I think empowering them to understand that, like, ultimately, to me, it's like guys used to say, and Kirk, obviously there's plenty of coaches that still think about it this way, because you have to have an ego to be a successful coach. But you also have to be able to listen. But the ability to admit that the players make the plays is really an important thing because for a lot of coaches want to take credit for their because they do something well or scheme wise, and there are plenty of instances where coaches make great calls and all those kind of things, but the players still have to execute. So congratulating the fact that the players make the play is important because in the end, like that is what gives them. It's like what you said. That's what gives them the confidence. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I called a nice play or I taught you the technique, but you have to still figure it out and do it. And once they understand that, and they understand that, listen, ultimately, dude, the power's with you. The power lies with you. The power does not lie with me. The power lies with you. And you know what? That's a good thing. That's a good thing that the power lies with you.
Scary thing, but it's a good thing.
You want to rely on me to make the right call all the time? I'm sorry, I can't get in your head. I can't, I can't make your hands go here or there or wherever. The fact that the power lies with you is where you want it to lie. You want it to be in your hands.
And Shu, I was lucky when I was a 24-year-old O-line coach who obviously, like every 24-year-old coach, I knew everything in football.
Oh, hell yeah. We all do.
I talked an assistant O-line coach who was the brother of our AD. His name was Frank DeFelice. He coached with Jack Bicknell and Tom Coughlin at BC. And he comes in, and he's this older guy. And there are so many things I learned about him that have caused me to keep it simple when it comes from this. Things like, hey, we're struggling with the double team. Yeah, Frank, I'm doing this with the knee on the med ball and this and that. He goes, why don't you just line the two damn kids up and have them double team somebody? Then they'll get better at double team. I'm like, okay, yeah. And then our double teams got better. Okay, so you start listening. And he gave me this great line, and he was a military expert. Like, he was one of those guys. And he said, do you know the biggest difference in World War II between the American sergeants, the American lieutenants, and the German sergeants and lieutenants, whatever their ranks are? And I was like, no, Frank. And at the time when you're 24, you're like, yeah, I got you. What story are you telling me? He goes, the difference is that in the war, the German guys followed orders to the letter. The American guys knew how to adapt, to innovate, to figure it out. He goes, you need to empower your guys to understand that when shit breaks down, there is an answer. Can they find it? Are they going to be afraid of taking that risk? Are they going to go with it? Did you prepare them, like you said, with all the tools? And if you've done that job as a coach, that's a kid, right? We all talk about how we love coaching savvy, heady kids who understand everything, who check plays, who do all that. How do you think they get there? They don't just memorize
because they're savvy players and they've done this. Like, this is what they do, right? So don't take it away from them where they have a fear of possibly doing something on their own to make it work when they're trying everything possible. They're not trying to not do it right. They're not trying to be negative about it. They're trying to do it so that it is right. And if you empower them to, hey, you can take chances and make mistakes, and if not, we'll figure it out. But just the whole to be able to have the freedom to do that and the comfort level to do that, knowing my coach has my back, right? Like that's what it's really all about.
And it's the things you learn as you get older and you talk about mistakes. I was the king of, when I was young, it's like, once you call it good, that play worked. Excellent. Now they're set up for the next one. And then you'd run the next one. They'd shut it down. And you're like, what the hell? It was set up. And I remember Frank did this. We're playing a game. I was at Bentley University. I was the assistant OC, and we were running the ball. And we got into this double set. We motioned the field guy over when FIB ran triple. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Pitch goes out, gain of 8. Okay, we're ready for the play action. It's the only time Frank DeFelice ever grabbed me. And he grabs me by the arm and just goes, just do it again. All right, hey, coach, we're going to do it again. Like, let's stay with this play. We ran the same damn play for 3 drives and won the game because their answer was, we are not going to play your numbers to the boundary. We're afraid we had an NFL receiver to the field. And he looked at me and goes, you don't have to get to play 2, 3, and 4. Just run the plays that work. And if they're going to adjust, make them adjust. If they're willing to adjust, then keep hitting it. You talk about every DC is like, I'll give you the field flats. There are times to take the field flat and make them be the one to adjust. And now you get into the chess game, but it's the same thing with your players. Dude, if it's working, don't overthink it.
That's
make
right.
make them beat you or neutralize you, and then go into the next tool. But if the tool you're working with just continues to work, just keep hitting the same tool over and over again until they got you.
I'll give you a great story that, like, this is kind of a catastrophic example of this, and your example of war is a great example that coach told you. There's a book called Outliers. You ever read the book Outliers?
I've
Malcolm
heard of it.
Caldwell.
Yeah, but I
Yes,
haven't read it. No.
Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah. So so in the book he talks about uh, and this is, I think, was the 80s and 90s or whatever, and there was just an incident now where there was a Korean airplane that crashed, sadly, just recently. But he talked about how the Korean pilots Korean Airlines had a higher number of plane crashes than anyone else in the world, and Americans had pilots had the lowest number of plane crashes. And they were trying to figure out why. These guys were trained brilliantly and all these things. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. What it had to do with was their culture of following authority. So it goes to what you talked about with the Nazis during World War II, right? Koreans are taught in their culture not to challenge authority. Okay. And what happened was, when the pilot was making a mistake, his second in command would not step up and challenge him, even when he knew he was doing something wrong, because of the following orders thing. And the difference between pilots in America was that person, the second person, or sometimes the third captain that's in there, is there to make sure that the first captain is not making a mistake, and to be able to work together so they can obviously fly the plane correctly. And when they did the study, that was the number one thing. And so what they did was they then had the Korean pilots train with Americans and train in America to understand why those things were important, why it was important to understand, when to be able to speak up, when something is going wrong, and to be able to do that and not hesitate to speak up. And that was really what the issue was. And once they did it, they saw, obviously, it go down. But it was a cultural thing, and they always have a harder time with it because of that cultural thing. So I think it's really, from a coaching standpoint, we always talk about culture, right? But that's an important thing. You want your quarterback, okay, to, when you say, hey, why didn't you do this? If he has an answer that makes sense, you want to be able to listen to what that answer is and be like, oh, okay, you're out there. You're seeing this. I'm not out there. If this is what you're seeing. And then obviously you can check with the guys up top and all that kind of stuff to make sure he's not, seeing ghosts or all those kind of things. Yeah. But you have to respect what the player is feeling or seeing and be able to understand that. And when they're wrong, that's why you have, that's why you have the film and I don't know. Are you guys allowed to use tablets nowadays in college?
Yeah.
Yes. Those tablets that now come in handy, right? You can be like, hey,
God.
Man, what you're seeing, this is not what you're seeing, right? Or you go back, you look at, boom, you were right, dude. You were right. And for them to be able to push back, it's not a disrespectful thing, but it's a pushback in what they're seeing. And I think, younger coaches, because even though you feel like you're older on staff, you're, 40. I wish I was 41. 41 years old. Being younger and younger coaches in your age bracket, I think, do have a really good feel for that. They do have a better feel, and obviously, as you get older, if you can match that with wisdom and knowledge, you become incredibly powerful. Like the Indiana head coach is, right? He's like as modern as it comes with a lot of the things he's doing. At the same time that he's been around a long time, he's seen a lot of things, right? And I think that story, it always sticks with me because it's such a catastrophic thing. Yep. But it's also important. Like, if people don't feel like they have the freedom to speak up and question maybe what you're doing, and you be able to have a dialogue, a quick dialogue in football, but it's a dialogue. then you might not get the most out of them.
Yep. And I mean, I got to experience that firsthand here. Pat Murphy, our OC, who I was really excited to come here and work with him, because everywhere Coach Murph goes, he puts up points and the offense rolls. To see him at halftime, he would meet with us as assistants. What do you guys have? Okay. And then he'd talk to the offense, and then he'd look at him and go, what else? And he'd look at his guys, wide receivers, quarterback, O-line. What do you guys have? What's the stuff that you want, that you see? And those guys, like, I couldn't believe, guys, concisely, efficiently communicating, composure. Yeah. Hey, coach, you go into this formation, you have this all day. All right, hey, coach, if we're running inside zone, let's keep it to the field because they're doing this over here. We can handle that. All right, great. And he'd write every single one of those down, and those were all going to be used in the second half. And he was going to hammer that stuff early. And I think it also tells you, like, imagine being the O-line up front. Game's tied at halftime, and your center, your guy, turns around and goes, if you run counter to the boundary, we got you. All right? And the first run play out is counter to the boundary, and it hits. You're telling me those 5 guys aren't frothing at the mouth to go, right? And you see the O-line. What do you always see from the O-line when they're rolling? The little, hey, you know it. You know where it needs to be. It needs to be right here. Let's go. Keep it going. And what do? Hey, my job as a play caller just got a lot easier because the big boys are feeling good up front. Or that receiver goes, hey, if you give me access to the middle of the field, I'm going to dice this kid up. Completed. Well, guess what? Next play or 2 plays later, I'm coming right back to you so that you're looking up at the booth going, I know you heard me, and I'm going to make it work for you because I put my name on the line that this would work. So we're going to work just as hard on the stuff that we're giving you. It's the ownership part that we keep coming back to, which I think more than anything is the sign of a championship team, is the ownership they take in every little thing they do.
No doubt about it. Coach, it's been phenomenal having you on. You got a great personality, man. I tell you,
thanks,
really great personality. Absolutely. And you know, obviously you're going to continue to be really successful because you got a great grasp for everything in coaching and work with your players. So I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been great talking to you. An hour and 15 minutes flew by, dude. We could probably talk to you for all day. You won't be able to go do any recruiting or anything. You know what I mean? So,
hey, give me a call whenever. You guys going down to convention this year?
Not this year.
I don't think I'll be down there just because I got to coach a bunch of youth basketball games for me.
Oh dear Lord!
Coach has got a 9-year-old coach that you'll be calling in a couple of years to be a safety. By the way, he'll be a safety.
Let's go. Little pedal, little drive. Let's go.
Coach Shu, he dives into it all, Coach. You know, he's gone from high school to now middle school. Dude. I give him a lot of credit, dude, because he coaching these guys. It's like, I don't know if he's coaching kids more or coaching parents more, but it's one way or the other, dude. Like, you know.
It's definitely more parents than coaches.
Hey, thanks for doing the Lord's work on that one. I'm going to go back.
I'm going to go back. I know. Thank God.
No, Coach, I'm very thankful that of a large guy, you know, so that at least start listening before they challenge me. So, but anyway, Coach, we'll let you go. It's really great having you on, and continued success to you, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely,
you, guys. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
You too.
All right, that was great. Real phenomenal personality. I mean, like,
you want to play for a guy like that.
Ease of how he goes about things, which is really great. I think it's really conducive to, especially working with players. You know what I mean? So,
and I also think, like, coming from where he came from, right? Like, you're coming from. I mean, we're not talking
bright guy. I mean, really bright guy.
But I mean, we're not talking high academic schools. We're talking the highest of the high academic schools. You know what I mean? Like MIT, like they're there doing shit, like you said, creating generational change within their families for where they're going to school. You know, like there are people at those schools that are behind some of the things we have no idea about, right? But like, you know, and then for him to get an opportunity like that to walk into a building with a head coach who's kind of been there and established, like, and whatnot, like.
Yeah,
dude, it's like I said, it's always been an enticing program to me, URI. I've always just had I don't know, like, I guess a love for it. I don't know why, you know what I mean? Maybe because it was similar to, like, I thought, like a Hofstra type of area, but like you said, it's also Newport, dude. And I love Newport.
It's near Newport. Kingston's a nice area, and that was one of I played. That was one of the teams in our conference that we used to have some games with. So that was who I scored my first touchdown in college against. So
nice.
Yep. So it was really, really great. I think too. I just thought about it on the fly there, but we talked a lot about the Ivy League. What if they wanted to spend money? Shoot, what if MIT decided we want to have the best quarterback every year at D3? Like literally,
like you said, Johns Hopkins,
same thing.
I mean, you can think about
anyway. Yeah.
I mean, they're in the Final Four almost every year.
Yep. I mean, just think if they decided.
A lot of those schools. I mean, look, even he talked about, like even at your higher levels, like your Vanderbilts, right? Like your Rices.
Vanderbilt's got better, which is interesting. I thought they were better.
And you talked about the Texas schools having an advantage because of the oil money is the same way we're talking about Oregon having an advantage because of Nike money. Right? Like, or Michigan because they're having whoever, right? Like, at what point is who the hell knows? Like, you get the alums of Rutgers together and really throw it all into a pot. Like,
well, I read, so Sacramento State, which is a FCS program, they're going Division I, right?
Yeah.
But they have a donor that's like a bazillionaire.
Did you see who I believe they just hired? I thought they just hired Brennan Marion from UNLV, the OC.
Oh yeah, they did. Right. And so that was part of their whole
he's got this it's titled it's a go-go offense. I literally just listened to a podcast this morning with him. It's a mix.
I've watched a lot of stuff on the go-go offense.
So yeah, dude, it's a spread with option, right?
It's option from the gun, from pistol, but it allows you to it basically is like a shot offense. Like, so you take shots.
Yes, and he talked about that. He talks about that in the podcast. Like, he lines two backs up on the same side, right?
Two backs to the same side to try to create imbalances, and then take shots down the field. One option.
He was with our boy London at William & Mary, right?
Yeah, he was there. Yep,
he's been a lot of places, Hawaii, and I mean, he's been a lot. I mean, Coach London actually told him, like, hey, this is where I'm gonna stay. I'm probably gonna retire here. Like, you need to go, right? Like, keep going, because otherwise you're just gonna be here with me at William & Mary forever. So kind of go make your move, and that's kind of where he's, kind of how he's done things and whatever. He was a wide receiver for the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's he came with the offense in high school. He was coaching in high school.
Literally, yep. It's listen, and I love this podcast. He does a great job. It's the coaching coordinator podcast.
I don't even.
I'm sure you've listened to it or whatever. He's really good. It's Keith Grabowski.
I'm sure I have, but I don't know off the top of my head. But I have watched. I've watched his presentations. I've watched 4 or 5 of his on how he runs it and what he does there. He tries to. His whole philosophy is it's all about numbers.
Of course,
it's his version of how he attacks with numbers, which is really, and then the shots down the field is a big deal in his offense. Whereas he wants to draw you in for the run game and the option and to take shots down the field, like switches and all that kind of stuff he likes to run. But yeah, really, really good stuff. All right, let me run because I know I got to go over to Husky. I think they're halfway through, but I got to jump on there. I'll hit you up a little later.
Go get him, buddy.
All right, bye.